Well, an original podcast series is exploring shocking DNA results from a woman in Maryland who finds she and her best friend are actually sisters to the host's own family bombshells.
It's called Suddenly Family and DNA Discoveries with Samuel Burke. Take a look.
Now you have to call your childhood neighbor and tell her that you're a lot more than just the girl next door.
I did call Joanne. She goes, "Oh my God, okay." And then I put all the pieces together. I said, "You realize that my son is the only living grandson of our biological father. And my son is your nephew." I said, "and my grandchildren are related to you, and those would have been Henry's great-grandchildren." I said, "We're all related."
Wow. This morning, award-winning international journalist Samuel Burke joins us to talk about his podcast series and more. Welcome, Samuel.
Jeanette, Marissa, good morning.
Good morning to you. You know, this is such an interesting concept because we know DNA testing is a billion-dollar industry, and often we see it marketed with happy revelations and happy endings. But you're exploring the other side of testing and things we don't know and perhaps don't want to know.
Exactly. All of the ads show people overwhelmed and joyous. This is everything I ever wanted. But what they don't tell you is the other side. 11% of people who take a DNA test will discover that one of their parents isn't their biological parent. Now, that seemed ridiculous to me until it happened twice in my own family. We can talk about that, but this story from Maryland is really one of the most moving in the podcast because the woman who is speaking, her best friend next door, she always hangs out with the family next door. She feels more at home with them than she does her own family. Well, it turned out that her mother had an affair with the neighbor's husband. And it turns out her dad is really the husband next door of that family. And her whole life, she's known that something is off, but she doesn't know what it is until she gets that DNA test. So she really has to rebuild her life. Luckily, her new half-sister happens to be her best friend.
You know, Samuel, these are incredible stories. And talk about being able to relate. You mentioned it there that you yourself had 3 bombshells in your own family. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we found a cousin who we thought was dead. We thought he had died 30 years ago. He turned out to be alive. My mom found a sister that she didn't know about at our same synagogue. That family attended our same synagogue. And the most shocking really, though, was we're Jewish, obviously, since we're attending synagogue. And when I buy my dad the DNA test for Hanukkah, it comes back 50% Jewish and also 50% Mormon. Now, we didn't even know that Mormon could show up on a DNA test, but it turns out Mormons can be considered an ethnic group because of their deep history in Utah. Quite a shock for a Jewish family to come back as Mormon on a DNA test, though. But we then decided to start investigating this. How is this possible? We don't see any Burks. My last name is Burke. No Burks on my dad's DNA test. And you'll see in the podcast that we find out that my dad's father, the man who raised him, wasn't his biological father. But we don't have any answers for sure. My dad believes that maybe his parents used a sperm donor to get pregnant. But my uncle, my dad's brother, thinks maybe my grandmother had an affair. And so that's the thing about DNA tests. They promise to give you all the answers. But in my series, you'll see that they leave people with many, many more questions.
You said in one of the segments that I watched, a simple swab of the cheek robbed us of everything we thought was true. And my question for you, we talk about what you lose, right, in the mystery. What have you gained and what have the people on your show gained with having that knowledge of where they come from?
Well, I think it is the truth. So many of the people will say it was so difficult, it changed everything about who I am, but at least I know the truth for sure. But you can lose family along the way. You might find out that a family member that you didn't like isn't related to you anymore and that you don't want to keep that relationship up anymore. And you may gain something. My mom gained a new sister, a woman who happens to live right down the street from my mom. She looks like my mom. She's also a teacher like my mom. And they've formed this really great bond. And so I think it really is a testament to what is family. And that woman from Maryland, I think, said it best in the entire podcast. She said, family are the people who show up for you. It's not necessarily the people you're related to. It's not necessarily the people you grow up with, but the people who will show up for you in these hard times. Though you may find that some of these people don't show up for you when the going gets tough after a DNA test.
Samuel, really quickly, because they're wrapping me here, but I want to make sure people know what else you have on your podcast. We shared a couple of the stories. What's a quick teaser for something else that people can tune in for?
One of the most stunning surprises, a gay man who gets a DNA test result that nobody would think a gay man would get when he finds out that he has a daughter he didn't know that he had.
Just incredible. This is a fascinating podcast. I mean, the name alone is intriguing. Suddenly Family, Samuel Burks, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. You've got us very much interested in this podcast for those who haven't listened to it yet.
Have a great morning.
You as well. Thank you.